world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just
speaking into the void?
But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Start your day with Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal. The instant oatmeal ready to help you tackle whatever your day brings. Like wrangling your toddler into their car seat. That was fun. Coaching your 6th graders soccer team. Go girls! And carrying all the groceries in one trip. Whew. Try Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal, granola, and bars. Great taste and a good source of protein. Quaker, bring out the good.
Hello and welcome to Haway The Podcast, and you join us for another episode of On This Week as we take a stroll down memory lane and have the crack about all things that happened on this week in the history of Sunderland AFC. And of course, I have my two regular companions with me today. So first of all, we'll say good morning to Kelvin. Hello, Kelvin.
Good morning, lads. Good morning. How are you both this morning?
I am exceptionally good, and we are recording this on the Thursday after, or the Wednesday after it's Thursday. It's Thursday. We're recording this on the Thursday after the derby, and life is going to be good, isn't it? After a game like that, Kelvin, where does that rank on derby wins at Newcastle for you?
It was. If you'd asked me that on Monday morning, I wouldn't have been able to tell you because I wasn't compass mentis. That's dreadful, but I had a good day. It's up there. It's right up there. A victory on their patch, and the manner of it as well. Great second half. Any victory on their patch, right up there, right in the top 10. I've seen a few,
Well, we've all seen a few over the past 15, 16 years, haven't we? But also with us is Andrew Smithson, of course. And Andrew, from your perspective, where does that sit? Going into that game, all of the rhetoric before the game was that they were going to be smashing us, they were going to pulverise us. We had loads of injuries going into the game. We've got a young goalkeeper who's only played a couple of games for us. Bloody satisfying, isn't it?
It is. That context and the way that the build-up went just adds to the beauty of it all. And yeah, there's been a couple of times since where I've just caught myself, and for some reason my brain's decided to be mean and say, oh yeah, but imagine how upset you'd be now if we'd lost, and how horrible this international break would be. So yeah, it's not just the fact that we won, it's also the fact that it stopped me having a 3-week sulk until our next first team game. So it's just brilliant, and nice little piece of marketing from yourself, Martin, because we have recorded a podcast where myself and Ant rank the various victories over Newcastle in recent years, and I'm not sure on the schedule, that might have already come out, and if you've missed it, by all means dig that out, because we have a bit of fun with Chris going through the games and giving our little memories of them. So yeah, it's been good fun this week. I think all I've spoken about all week is Sunderland versus Newcastle.
And, we've got to enjoy it, haven't we? Because unlike the other lot up the road, we know that these things go in swings and roundabouts. We know that one day we'll get beat off them again, and that's kind of fine because that's what happens in football. And you just got to enjoy the moment now. And, fortunately for us, there's been a good decade and a half of very good moments when we played them in the league. So we will continue to bask in that glory. Now, Andrew, you wanted to put something right, I believe.
Yes, it's another advert for another pod. Gavin had a really good pod with Councillor Kevin Johnston recently, talking about development in the city and how that impacts the club and how the club can be a good tool, a good marketing tool for the area. And I made an error in that of a historical nature, and me being me, it's bugged me ever since. So yeah, we were talking about the signage that's going to go up at the back of the Roker end as part of the Legends display. And I said that the Welcome to Sunderland signage had previously been on the Wearmouth Bridge, but I've gone and got myself confused. I don't know if either of you lads ever went to Sunderland Illuminations.
Yes.
Did you ever? Yeah.
I used to go as a kid, yeah.
Well, I did as well, very fond memories. The Welcome to Sunderland signage was displayed as part of that before the club obtained the signs and put it up at the back of the full end. It was on Cliff Park in along the seafront there, and it formed part of the illuminations. I incorrectly said it was at the bridge. Nobody else in the world will care about this, but because I got it wrong, and I'm always preaching to other people about getting things right, I thought I'd just check myself. The confusion, and I think where I've mixed the two things up, was in 1988 on the bridge.
Champions.
Yes, exactly. They used the exact signage. It was the council must have got their hands on like a batch of these red letters that were backed by those white wooden panels, and it said something along the lines of "Well done, the lads" in 1988 to congratulate the team on winning the Division 3 title. So I've mixed the two up. I've got them slightly confused in my head, and I'd committed the heinous error of stating a mistruth on the pod. And yeah, for that, I couldn't let it slide. I couldn't let myself off.
So it just speaks to your character, Andrew, because you could have not mentioned anything. Nobody would have known, but you've owned the mistake. Now you've told all the listeners that you've made an error. So, well done.
Yeah, but my character is blooming twisty fella who's so anal about things that he has to pull himself up on it. I don't know what that says about me as a person, but yeah, the record is straight now, at least.
Very good, and that is all that matters. And you left the listeners with a question at the end of last week's episode.
Yes, hopefully I got this one right, because this will be a bit more embarrassing. 1st of April 1995, Martin, it was Peter Reid's first game in charge. We were at home to Sheffield United. We won 1-0. It was a vital win. It kind of really kick-started the whole Peter Reid era. And the question was, who scored the winner that day at Roker Park?
Well, I know the answer, of course, and I spotted this chap when they were doing all of the derby moments and replays on TV the other day. I saw this chap jumping up and down from the Sunderland bench, celebrating wildly at St James's Park as one of the goals went. I think it must have been when Poirier was the manager, perhaps. But of course, I think he's now in the employ of the Saudis, isn't he?
He is. It's the Jarrah Arra himself, Craig Russell. I like to think that, yeah, when Broby scored that winner, I like to think that he kept a stony face, but in the back of his mind, he's thinking, yeah, go on, lads, get in. Yeah, he works for them now, but he had a long time working on our backroom staff as well. Craig Russell he was, at one point, he was a real crowd favourite. You know, a Sunderland fan making it in the first team's always going to be popular. And lads, do you remember that goal? Do you remember the actual finish?
I do. Full end.
Yeah. I watched the video again last night to remind myself of it, and something's gone wrong. There's some sort of problem in the time-space continuum, because the way I remember it was the keeper gets a hand to the shot and it took about 3 minutes to drop over the line and bobble over. But when you watch the video, it just takes a split second. He hits it, doesn't he? And it was from the edge of the box. And I think the shot was at a comfortable height for the keeper. Craig Russell was normally good in that position to like get his shot low into the corner. But for this one, it was a bit higher. And I'm guessing it was Alan Kelly in goal for Sheffield United.
Could have been, couldn't it?
He's fumbled it. And the ball's looped up into the air and then dropped into the net. And I was in the Fulwell end that day. And yeah, in my mind, it seemed to take forever. I think that was just the nerves and the like, will it, won't it go in? And of course, it caused pandemonium, and it really helped Reid get off to a good start that just led to a complete revolution in the years that followed.
It did. No, he was a good striker, Craig Russell. He had pretty much everything, didn't he? He had pace, he could finish. It still puzzles me, as it does with a number of players, really, when you look back on the careers. He didn't actually really kick on. At Sunderland, obviously, we went on to exchange him for Nicky Sumby, didn't we?
Yeah.
In the first Stadium Lights season, which was a brilliant move by Reid at the time. But then Russell ended up playing left back for Man City at some point, and he never quite kicked on at all. But I always remember when he came back the following season with Tranmere. Very early on that season, he got a fantastically good reception, and he came off in the second half for Tranmere. I think we beat them 5-0. But yeah, absolute crowd favourite and a exceptionally good goal scorer, and his current employment doesn't diminish that.
Well, this is one of the reasons I wanted to just remind everybody of his true self. That game in particular, you're dead right. He was an exciting striker with a lot of things, Martin, and he'd only been brought on for the last 20 minutes in that game. And within a few minutes, he'd broken through the middle, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody got sent off because they hauled him down. And then suddenly this high-profile game, Sheffield United were one of the better sides at the time. Sunderland, as ever, were at the bottom struggling. And then suddenly, because Russell's come on and got a player sent off, we're against 10 men, and it's a real opportunity to pick up a win. And those last 10, 15 minutes are all about Russell just like tearing into them and putting them on the back foot. So yeah, he was a good striker, and we'll talk about that a lot more fondly than we will, unfortunately for him, he's got to pay the bills. I'll give him that. He's got to pay the bills.
Hey, we've all got to pay the bills, Andrew.
Yeah. So Craig Russell was this week's answer, and it led to a lot of positive things at Sunderland in the years that came.
Very good. Excellent. We will begin this week's episode now on March the 30th, 1912. Arthur Bridges, and he's somebody who we've mentioned an awful lot in these podcasts, haven't we, as we keeps popping up with goals for Sunderland. But he played his final game for Sunderland against Manchester City at their former home of Hyde Road. He played 348 games for us and scored 116 goals. We got beat 2-0 on this occasion. But he's the only Sunderland player to have scored more than 100 goals without getting a hat-trick. So there you go. His goals were nice and evenly spaced out. 1934, we beat Blackburn 3-0 at Roker Park. Rach Carter got 2 goals and Sandy McNabb got another. A year later, 1935, we beat Leeds 3-0 at Roker Park. Alex Hall got 2 and Bobby Gurney got a goal. Now, these goals sound brilliant. So one of Alex Hall's goals, he volleyed in from the halfway line, just went under the bar, which is some achievement in itself. Bobby Gurney's goal was apparently even better. He received a throw-in near the halfway line, turned and hooked it over his shoulder on the volley, and that went into the top corner as well. So 2 spectacular goals by all accounts at Roker Park to beat Dirty Leeds 3-0. 1955, Roker Park staged its first all-ticket game and its only FA Cup semi-final. Newcastle beat York 2-0 to set up the final against Man City. And obviously, we'd been knocked out of the FA Cup the week earlier. We talked about that game last week, didn't we? The 55 semi-final. And Manchester City beat us in that game. So I'm not sure what the mood would have been like around Sunderland with hosting a Newcastle versus York City semi-final to see who would go and play Man City. I'm sure it would have been a little bit more excitement around the place if we'd been awaiting them at Wembley. But of course, Newcastle beat York and went on to the FA Cup final. 1968, we beat Forest 3-0 at the City Ground. George Cannell and Calvin Palmer and Ralph Brand got the goals for Sunderland. In the Forest team that day were Jim Baxter and Joe Baker. Now, 1996, this is a game that it sticks in my head all the time. I think about this game far too often than I should do. We beat Huddersfield 3-2 at Roker Park. And this is another one of those games where it's a huge game in the context of the season. We were 2-1 down. Tony Norman was in goal for Huddersfield that day. He'd left Roker Park. Peter Reid gave him a free transfer in the summer. He'd gone to Huddersfield, played there for a season. He was in goal this day. On comes Micky Bridges. Now, he had a few sub-games, hadn't he? Come on, and I've said this before, he's the first player younger than me who I ever saw play for Sunderland, which kind of ruined all sorts of dreams and all that sort of stuff, and I don't bear any grudges to him whatsoever, of course. He came on sub, scored 2 great goals, didn't he? And he was the youngest player to score 2 goals for us ever, 17 years in 238 days. That gave us our 9th successive win, which is a bloody good run. And it really got us, that momentum was building already, wasn't it? But that really kind of, that afternoon gave you that feeling, we're going to do this.
When he came on, though, Martin, I remember being at this game with my laddie. We were at the back of the Roker end, and when he came on, I think prior to that, hadn't Tony Norman played a really cracking game, and it was looking like it had a feel of a game that was going to slip away from us. Huddersfield had played quite well, and I thought, I did think, oh God, we'll come all the way down from bloody Scotland for this game, and the laddie's sitting there with his lip tripping him because it was 2-1 and Bridges come on. He was fantastic when he come on. As you say, we'd seen him before a little bit, but I think it certainly lit that was a game where he kind of came to the fore, I think, in the eyes of a lot of Sunderland fans. He turned the game with his goals.
Really announced himself, didn't he? And I don't know if you remember, it was 1-1 half time, and Huddersfield had a lad on loan from Manchester United called Ben Thornley. And at half time, I'm sure it was when after the whistle had blown for half time, he got booked for saying something to the referee or having a crack at the referee. And then he threw the ball at the referee or something ridiculous. He got 2 yellow cards after the half-time whistle had blown. So Huddersfield obviously had to come out with 10 men. They go into the lead in the second half. Mm-hmm. Andy Booth, who was a good goal scorer for them, scored and put them in front. And you look at it, Bridges came on with just 15 minutes left for Craig Russell. He gets an equaliser on the 82 and gets a winner on the 87. So it is last gasp stuff, but as you say, it's that sort of game where you get a real feeling that the season's going to go our way.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that and how the momentum was building, because Sunderland at that point just didn't come from behind to win games. So the fact that under Reid things were changing, Sunderland were doing all of these things for the first time in years, were really making you think, oh wow, this is special. But yeah, Mr. Thornley gave us a helping hand. I think we might have had Terry Cook on loan for us at the time. So there was a bit of a like, which team have got the best Man United prospect here?
You know, I thought in my head that's correct, but I've just pulled the game up here, and Terry Cook wasn't in the lineup according to StatCast. I dispute that, I have to say, from memory, but
well, listen, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, I was obviously still prattling on the date to me mate saying, "Oh, Terry Cook's better than him," and they're looking at us thinking, "Andrew, man, he's not even on the pitch, so you can shut up." The that time, that era, I remember a lot of things vividly. Micky Bridges, as he came onto the pitch before he'd even done anything, got an absolutely massive bollocking off Kevin Ball, like proper finger in his face, telling him, "You better sort this out for us." Bridges was probably thinking, "Well, hang on, I've not done anything yet." Did he get the Man of the Match award? And it was a bottle of booze, and he couldn't drink it.
I suspect he would have.
Yeah, and sadly, we talk about Craig Russell now and his unfortunate choice of employer. Did either of you see the footage of Micky Bridges when we scored the winner, when Broby scored the winner at St. James a few days ago?
The mask slipped, didn't it?
It did, sadly, yeah. He might have played for Sunderland and given us very good service, but he's obviously deep down, he's obviously a Newcastle fan because he wasn't best pleased with that one, bless him.
No, it made it even more satisfying. I know we're going to keep coming back to this all day, aren't we? There's so many good clips around the place. To just keep going. I'm glad we've got 3 weeks until the next game, because you wouldn't be able to watch all of the clips on YouTube if we had another match on Saturday, would we? 2013, Martin O'Neill was sacked as Sunderland manager. He'd played 66 games, won 21, drawn 20, and lost 25. And it was such a disappointing sort of way for it to fizzle out, didn't it? You know, Martin O'Neill was somebody who I think most people wanted to come into the club as manager for an awful long time. Even when he was at Leicester, we wanted him to come in. We saw him as the Sunderland manager. His allegiance to Sunderland and his love of Charlie Hurley and all that sort of stuff was really well documented. It felt really natural. Niall Quinn had tried to bring him in, didn't he, when he take over with Drummondville, and it didn't happen. You finally get him, you think, right, this is it. And it was good for a spell, wasn't it? But it just fizzled out towards the end, and it was such a shame that he didn't hit the heights at all, did he? He hit at Leicester and Aston Villa and Celtic and in all those places he enjoyed success.
Yeah, it was disappointing, Martin. But it was, I can remember watching him coming towards the end of that era. I think I must have been in the East Stand for a game and looked across, and honestly, he just looked like a rabbit in the headlights, I cannot even remember what game it was. But I really, really felt for him, because I would think that what we're saying about him is what he thinks. That this was his team, this was his boyhood team. He really wanted to come. He wanted to do a cracking job. He wanted that on his CV. And as he got off to an okay start, as you say, there were a couple of spells where you thought, well, hey, here we go. But it just never happened, did it?
Am I right in thinking that in his autobiography, he mentions his love of Sunderland as a kid, but I think he only briefly skims over his time as manager, very possibly for those reasons, lads, that it was a dream come true for him, and even one of the most erudite managers, a manager who'd taken a club in Leicester with similar resources to like real success, and even he couldn't turn around the mess at Sunderland. I think he does view it as like a real disappointment on his CV, bless him. I really don't remember him talking much about his time at the stadium. It's almost as if he'd rather it hadn't happened. Quite sad, really.
There's probably a little bit of embarrassment there as well, and regret, isn't it, from him? Because he will have wanted more than anybody for that to be a huge raving success. And I think there was factors, John Robertson didn't come with him and stuff like that, which was often blamed or attributed anyway to him not quite hitting it. But there's always, as we've talked about before, the club was a mess behind the scenes, and I think any manager coming in that point would have found difficulty in actually putting together a consistently winning team.
You're dead right. Would it be fair to say that his appointment in those first few months after he took charge, was that the last time we had genuine aspirations of a top 10 finish in the Premier League? Is that a fair
until present day?
Yeah. Well, that's the point I was going to make. It's only now in 2026 that the club are now in a healthy position.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Because, Di Canio followed him, Poyet followed him, Advocat, Allardyce, Moyes. We never had any prospect of finishing top half of the table after that, did we? And it's one of those, you always wonder how it would have played out and whether, we've seen countless times, haven't we, where in the past you've persevered with a manager, they've gone through a sticky spell, and they've got through the other side, and it's been good rather than chopping and changing all the time, which is, unfortunately how things are done these days. I'm on a Thursday on the website. I'm kind of following the run-in of the 1988 promotion season, right? And we're second in the table, having dropped from first, and we've won 1 in 7. The crowd are chanting what a load of rubbish. Dennis Smith's threatening to resign. He would have been sacked. If that was now, he'd have been sacked because they thought, right, we need somebody else to give us a kick to get promoted. And then you wouldn't have had that, that run of the next few seasons where he actually gets us into the top flight. So there's an awful lot to be said for patience at the right time. Sometimes there's not. But I do wonder how O'Neill would have worked out if we'd stuck with him.
Well, I don't think we were even in the relegation zone when he got given his cards.
No.
So yeah, it wasn't like we were in dire straits when he went.
Yeah. But when you look at as well, just to back that up, in terms of his skills and attributes, you look at the Goldfish Bowl that he's working in at the moment and the job that he's done at Celtic, because they are a mess, Celtic, and he's making loads and loads of sense of it and doing a canny job. You do kind of feel that if there'd been a little bit more patience, a little bit more support, that he might have turned that around, because he's obviously still got something, because that's a hell of a job he's doing at Celtic all those years later. So I was sorry that didn't work out for him, and I did feel that pulled the plug a bit too early, but I could see why they had done it. He looked like he was, he looked like he didn't know what he was going to do next. Watching him on the touchline.
And, let's be realistic. If he hadn't gone, we wouldn't have had that 3-0 win at St. James's Park. Di Canio was sliding down the touchline and all that sort of stuff. Have we seen? We're keeping in the theme of derby wins there. So, there was an upside to it, a temporary upside at the very least.
I can't remember that one. Oh, yes, I can.
Martin, are we playing a game today where every single story we mention, we're going to give ourselves bonus points if we link it back to a Newcastle win?
100%. Yeah, you've got to make the most of it, because things will turn around one day, but maybe not in the next decade or two. 2018, we beat somehow we beat Derby 4-1. I still think about this game and do not know how on earth this team somehow managed to forget all of the terrible form it had been in, for one night, he remembered how to play football. George Honeyman, Ashley Fletcher even scores. That tells you everything you need to know about how ridiculously bizarre this game was. Aidan McGeady, I think, got a penalty, and John O'Shea got goal, beat Derby 4-1. And to this day, it's baffling. Absolutely baffling. But there you go. We will take a very short break on that note and back soon.
Are you stuck staring at your W-2? Are tax refund worries holding you back? You probably have FOMO, the fear of messing up. The fix? Using TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They find every credit and deduction to help you get every refund dollar you deserve. Or your money back. It's time to overcome your fear of messing up and get your taxes done right. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
Zootopia 2 has come home to Disney+.
Let's go!
Get ready for a new case.
We're the greatest partners of all time!
New friends.
Gary the Snake.
And your last name?
The Snake.
Dream Team. Hit new habitats.
Zootopia has a secret reptile population.
You can watch the record-breaking phenomenon at home. Zootopia 2, now available on Disney+, rated PG. And right now you can get Disney Plus and Hulu for just $4.99 a month for 3 months with a special limited time offer. Ends March 24th. After 3 months, plan auto renews at $12.99 a month. Terms apply.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast for a look back at all of the Derby wins that we've had. Oh, no, sorry. You're joining us for another episode of One This Week. Now then, March the 31st, 1962, Brian Clough made his first return to Ayresome Park after joining Sunderland, and he scored the only goal as we beat them 1-0. It was also Peter Wakeham's final appearance for the club. 1969, Sunderland played a match against Burnley. The pitch was waterlogged. There was a snowstorm, which prevented the referee apparently from seeing the linesman. We were 1-0 down, so at half-time, that game was abandoned. Obviously, nothing to do with the scoreline and everything to do with visibility. 1990. Now we...
Sorry to interrupt, Mark. Yeah, that game, just thinking about that game, there was 2 future Sunderland players playing for Burnley that day. Any ideas, lads?
2 future Sunderland players playing for Burnley.
Was Frosty the Snowman one of them, given how bad the conditions were?
Any ideas? No?
Doug Collins, he was at Burnley.
Doug Collins, good shout, Andrew. Yeah, Doug Collins.
Very good.
Big centre half was the other.
Jim
was
Holton?
the other.
Was it?
It wasn't Jim Holton, but yeah, you're in the right year.
Colin Waldron?
Colin Waldron. Yeah, so
well
them
done.
2 played. And just to keep on the Newcastle theme, and just because it's just up the road from me, there was a lad called John Angus, played for them, and he was from Amble. He was a big Newcastle fan, big Newcastle supporting family. But he actually was an England international, that lad. I hadn't realised that. And there were 2 Hetton Lahore lads involved in that game as well. Harry Potts, the manager, was from Hetton Lahore, and Ralph Coates, who we were often good. You used to see that every year. He was one of these players that, Sunderland's going to buy Ralph Coates, because he was a cracking player. He had the Bobby Charlton hairstyle, Ralphie Coates. The brush over, but he was a cracking player, Coates. But from Hetton Lahore, that's just South Sunderland, isn't it? I've never actually been to Hetton Lahore. Right?
It's within the city boundaries, but technically it's its own little town, and it's next to Holton. It's where the reserves and a lot of the women team play. That's where Appleton is.
Yeah.
Kelvin, I'll take you along one time. It's a nice little part of the world. I'll take you to Hetton one time.
Okay, yeah.
And
I look forward to that.
You didn't seem too thrilled at that prospect. Burnley absolutely loved a northeast prospect, didn't they? At that time, you spoke about your mate from Amble and that. They really farmed the northeast quite heavily for players. Their scouting system was quite strong in the area. So yeah, I dare say most times we played Burnley in that era, there will have been one or two North East lads lining up for them.
Yeah, they were a bit of a form. They used to, it was, I digress as we like to, but I can remember lads in the school team I played in going to Burnley, but they'd suck them in and then spit them out the other end. They weren't as kind with the way that they looked after young'uns back then. Aye, good stuff. Good game.
And Bob Paisley, of course, is another famous het in the hole person, isn't he?
His bar at Ebbleton, there's a bar named after him, and that's just been refurbished, apparently, gents. I've not had a chance to go in there, but yeah, he's they're very proud of his achievements in Hetton.
Very good. 1990. Now, Kelvin, last week you talked about the West Ham game and Kieran Brady scoring a little overhead kick and running West Ham's defence ragged. A week later, we go to Bradford, win 1-0. Kieran Brady's on the score sheet again. And I was reading the match report this afternoon, and Dennis Smith actually is quite critical of him because apparently he missed a sitter in the first half and he should have done better with something in the second half. When you read the description of the goal, he gets the ball, weaves past a couple of players, majestically lifts it over the goalkeeper, and as a young lad coming into the team to follow his performance and go up against West Ham with another win, and this was a Sunderland team that needed to string a few results together. They weren't in tremendously good form. You'd have thought he deserved a pat in the back and a bit of praise from Dennis Smith, but he certainly made his mark in this game as well, and in another game which we'll come on to later this week.
Yeah.
All right, we will move on to 1995. Now, at the top of the show, we talked about Craig Russell's goal against Sheffield United, and obviously that fell into this week. A few days earlier, Peter Reid was appointed as manager, of course, and Sunderland were also fined $2,500 for fielding Dominic Matteo against Barnsley. So I'm not sure if Peter Reid was waiting for the outcome of this verdict to sign on the dotted line or what, because I think it was felt that we might get a points deduction for fielding Matteo. He's obviously ineligible to play in the game. The fact that we got 2-0 got beat 2-0 might have worked in our favour in this instance, but we got a very small fine, all things considered. I think Bob Murray has done his best in terms of representation in that case. But Matteo, yes, obviously, he's gone back to Liverpool. We were fined $2,500, which reduced Peter Reid's beer money a little bit, and Reid came into Roker Park, and that's the start of a whole new chapter in the club's history, isn't it?
No, it was where we were at the time, though, wasn't it? That debacle, and I don't know how we got away without a points deduction. Because if you look at if you were thinking about precedent, it didn't matter what the situation was, whether the team had lost or whatever. They got a points deduction for that. I cannot think of. I'm sure. I read in the local press somewhere something about how lucky we had been, and that it was Murray's canvassing of the league and defending what had gone off that saved we. Because I don't know if how close would that have been if we had points deducted. It would have been a gay close run thing, I think, for Reid.
In that immediate point, I think it could have very well dropped us actually into the relegation zone. And Kelvin, you're right in that. From what I understand, it was purely the fact that Bob Murray was a respected figure. I don't think the club had given the authorities much chew in recent years. Bob Murray had often been seen as a supporter of the FA and the Football League, and it was as much his past dealings and his personality that kept us out of trouble than anything else. I think he was often one of the loudest voices in terms of fighting against the Premier League breakaway and things like that. So Murray had kind of got the club a bit of a high reputation in the corridors of power, and that's basically what's kept us in the good books. And they've thought, we'll give Sunderland a bit of leeway because they're a canny lot up in the northeast there. So yeah, we often talk about Murray. That was one of those ones where his influence counted. And then in years to come, you see that he became a very high figure and was involved a lot in the FA and the construction of Wembley. So, he kept his nose clean, and it worked out for everyone in the long run.
It's probably the benefit of hindsight as well, but that decision to appoint Reid was a brave decision as well, given when you sort of look at what had gone off with Reid at Man City, and because Reid hadn't he had massive fallout with a running feud, I think he had with the Man City chairman. I've lost his name for the moment. Is it
Franny Lee?
I
Was it
think
Franny
it was,
Lee at that point?
Was
or
it
before?
Peter Swales.
Peter Swales,
Okay.
yeah. Aye. It was a brave appointment, really, that one. Aye.
Well done, lads, by the way, for being able to recall the name of the Manchester City chairman from 30 plus years ago. That's good knowledge, lads. I bow down to you for that one.
Hey, there we go. There's all sorts of useless information tucked away somewhere.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna declare me hand on you it because he was the chairman that bought David Watson, who we're going to be talking about shortly. So
there we go.
I'm not that clever.
2012, we drew 3-3 at Manchester City under Martin O'Neill. This was a game where Seb Larson scored 2, Nicholas Bentrud scored another. We were 3-1 up going into the last 5 minutes, and someone managed to chuck it away and draw 3-3. 2013, a year later, Paulo Di Canio was appointed. We discussed that very briefly earlier with Martin O'Neill's departure. And 2019, on the 31st of March, was the Checker Trade Trophy final at Wembley, where we drew 2-2 with Portsmouth. And McGeady got a very late equaliser in extra time, didn't he? And then we went on to miss penalties. There you go. And also on March the 31st, back in 1922, there was a birth of somebody who was on the books of Sunderland, Andrew, but became a lot more well-known for activities in other areas.
Yeah. You'll be pleased to know this isn't one of my deeper dives that you look at the clock and you realise I've been talking for 2 hours. This is just a quick one. It was the birth of Sid Wheel in North Allerton. I think it's pronounced Wheel. It was spelt Weighighell. And he was very successful in a different field, Martin. He was a very influential trade unionist. He was the General Secretary of the National Union of Railwaymen from 1975 to 1983. But at the time, that role was a lot more high profile than maybe it is now. I dare say there'll be a few listeners who'll remember his name in the news and what have you. He had a couple of well-publicised clashes with the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, and also with Arthur Scargill. It was a clash with Arthur Scargill that eventually led to his downfall. He went against the wishes of his NUR members in 1982 and chose not to support Scargill, and that led to him leaving his position. Some very good obituaries still online from like his death in February 2002. So if you want to read more about him, there's information out there. The reason he comes up in a Sunderland podcast is he took a 2-year period out of his career working on the railways. He signed for Sunderland in 1945. Prior to that, he'd been an apprentice engineer for LNER. after his time at Roker Park, he became a locomotive fireman and then a train driver. But in between that, he had this 2-year stint on our books. He never made it for the first team, but football was always part of his life growing up. He failed his 11+ exams, and he said that was because he always preferred going out on the pitch to studying. He was offered trials at a few clubs. Newcastle United were after him. Sheffield United were after him. But on the 12th of October, 1945, we got him. He was a talented inside left by all accounts. But in an era of, an era of very few friendlies, very few pre-season games, whilst he always played well for the reserves, he never managed to break into the first team. There was no substitutes then, so he never got that opportunity to play for the first team. But he obviously he fancied himself as a footballer, because he once said that he felt he was the best inside left the North East had seen, except for a certain gentleman by the name of Raish Carter. So you're putting yourself up in those high levels and putting yourself putting yourself alongside esteemed colleagues like him. I think it's no surprise that he backed himself and went on in later years to represent thousands and be very comfortable speaking on the national stage.
You could see what Sunderland could see in him, though, because he had a great turn.
Really good, Kelvin, really good. Talking about April Fools, we're going to go on to the 1st of April. Now, 1893, we got beat 2-1 at Bolton's Pikes Lane, which is where they had previously played before. Burnden Park, I think, was their ground before the Reebok Stadium, wasn't it? But anyway, we got beat 2-1 down there. But despite that result, we won our second successive league championship, because Preston, who were also up at the top of the table with us, got beat at Newton Heath, who of course became Manchester United. 1911, Charlie Buchan, another fella who we've mentioned on countless occasions on this pod, made his debut for Sunderland in a 1-1 draw against Tottenham Hotspur at White Hart Lane. Harry Lowe got the goal for us on that occasion. 1989, Sunderland drew 2-2 with Birmingham City at Roker Park. Paul Lemon and Marco Gabbiadini got our goals. And the perennial Sunderland target of the late 80s, John Frayne, got a late equaliser for Birmingham. 2000, Niall Quinn and Kevin Phillips scored to give us a 2-1 win over Southampton at the Dell. In 2002, Claudio Reyna scored 2 goals for us against Leicester, and we beat them 2-1. And I just remember these 2 goals being superb, and you kind of think, right, we've got this midfield player who we've desperately needed for such a long time. And he was superb that day. He really dominated the game, dictated the play, all that sort of stuff. And it's such a shame. I always think this is a massive shame. We never got to see more of Claudio Reyna in the centre of midfield. Obviously, he got injured early on, or relatively early on. Was it Howard Wilkinson's first game or second game he got injured? And he missed all of the rest of that season. And then he joined Man City, I think, without playing again for us from memory. But he went on to have a decent career at Man City and all that sort of stuff. But these 2 goals against Leicester, I don't know if either of you can remember them too vividly, but superb strikes.
He really served notice, didn't he? I hadn't been too sure about his signing, to be honest. But by gum, those 2 goals and that performance, brilliant. He looked a real fine. Wasn't his son born in Sunderland? Don't we? Yeah. I read that in the paper. We were sniffing around after him at some point recently. Young Rainier coming back to finish what his father never got the chance to.
Well, you never know. Where's he at? Borussia Mönchengladbach maybe this season.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be surprised if the club thought, we can get him in back, come back home.
Yeah, come back home. Yeah.
He might have a good World Cup, and then a lot of people will be asking.
Him and
Well,
Archie Gray.
Yeah, that's right.
His dad had a brilliant World Cup on Sunderland whilst on Sunderland's books, didn't he? I'm sure he was one of the star performers in the 2002 World Cup.
Yeah.
And I've just looked there, Martin. You bang on. It was Wilkinson's second game in charge, and whatever you think about the Wilkinson era, his first game I think was Niall Quinn's last game.
Yeah.
And then his second game was Claudio Reyna's last game. So that didn't help him. The Leicester weekend, I think, was the weekend of the Metro extension to Sunderland opening up. I seem to think that, just for all you history fans out there, that might be one worth double checking. I think for some reason after the game, just for the novelty factor, I got the Metro home, even though I spent longer queuing up for it than I would have done just walking up Newcastle Road. I think that was the same week. Apology. If not, you can be sure that I'll be making another correction at the beginning of next week's episode.
I'm sure you're on the right track there, Andrew.
Yeah. Sid Wheel would remember if that was the weekend of the Metro opening.
He certainly would. One person who will remember, and it's very apt, this happened on April Fool's Day in 2006, is John Stead scored his first goal for the club in his 30th game. This is a game at Goodison Park against Everton. And I was at this game. We delayed rushing to the ground in favour of having an extra pint or two. So by the time we got in, we didn't realise that we were 1-0 down. Because Everton had scored so early in the game. And I think when Stead scored, we thought we'd taken the lead, which adds insult to injury. But Kevin Ball was in charge on this day. Rory Delap got Sunderland's other goal, and I think he came very close to scoring a winner later on. I think he rattled the crossbar.
Yeah,
with a shot from long range.
Yeah.
Here's a question for both of you. A future Sunderland forward scored a goal for Everton that day.
I know this.
I
was at that game. Yeah, and I know this. So was it James McFadden?
It was James McFadden, yes, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
He certainly didn't do a great deal in Sunderland shirt, did he? But he did quite a bit in Everton shirt, and one of those things was a goal against us. We will take a very short break there, and we'll be back after a couple of ads.
Get in the game with the college-branded Venmo debit card. Rep your team with every tap and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash, a new rewards program from Venmo. No monthly fee, no minimum balance, just school pride and spending power. Get in the game and sign up for the Venmo debit card at venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
Nothing brings people together quite like Team USA at the Olympic Winter Games. From NBC Universal's iconic storytelling to the innovative technology across Xfinity and Peacock, Comcast brings the Olympic Games home to America, sharing every moment with millions. When Team USA steps onto the world stage, people aren't just watching, they're cheering together. This winter, everyone is all on the same team. Comcast, proud partner of Team USA.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast, and you join us for another episode of On This Week, and we are on to April the 2nd. Now, 1904, Ted Doig, obviously a very famous goalkeeper, played his 457th and last game for Sunderland against Manchester City. 1913, we played an FA Cup semi-final at Birmingham St Andrews Ground against Burnley. We beat them 3-2. Charlie Buchan, Jackie Mordew and George Holly got the goals, and that set up, I think that was a replay of the semi-final, wasn't it? I think we drew the first game, and that set us up to face Aston Villa in the final. 1966, we beat Stoke City 2-0 at Roker Park. O'Hare and George Mulhall got the goals, and in 1988, I was talking about this season earlier, this run-in into the first or the third division title. And it wasn't all plain sailing, but we'd come off the back of a defeat at York City, got into Grimsby Town, and we managed to scrape through that. Marco Gabbiadini got a first-half goal for us. that took us back to the top of the league. And Sean Cunnington was in the Grimsby team that day. So Skinny Sean rocking up for Grimsby.
He had a good
Yes.
He had a good game that day as well. I was I was living in Doncaster at the time and skipped down to Grimsby for a day out. A day out in Grimsby, you cannot whack it, lads.
Hey, good fish and chips.
Oh. Brilliant. But I played well that day, Sean Cunningham.
Well, he must have occasionally, if he didn't do it too often in Sunderland, did he?
Martin, your face when Kelvin said he had a good game. I don't know if you even knew you did it, but there was genuine shock flashed across your face.
So I've never heard those 4 words in the same sentence before.
I'm just teasing you, man. I'm just teasing you. We've done this before. You and Sean Cunnington, lad.
He's another on my list. Right. 2005, we beat QPR away 3-1 at Loftus Road. This was another very good day. I remember this one. We were 1-0 down, and Mick McCarthy was manager. I'm sure this was a season that we were going for the title, wasn't it? And he subbed Jeff Whitley, who wasn't injured, 3 minutes before half-time, put Chris Brown on, changed the formation, went into the dressing rooms 1-0 down, came back out in the second half, and the lads were kicking towards the away end. Andy Welsh, Chris Brown, and Julio got goals in the second half, and we ended up winning 3-1, but a great day out at Loftus Road.
It was a great day out. I was there, and of course, filing out, enjoying the win, the prospect of a night out in the bright lights of London awaiting us. Do you remember, or do you know what news was filtering through to us as we came out the ground? And I'll give you a clue. It's a dig.
Yes,
it's another dig at our rivals.
I do. It was Kieran Dyer and Lee Boyer having a punch-up on the field, wasn't it?
Yeah. One of those where I can't remember where we were at with mobile phones then, but the technology certainly wasn't as good as it is now. And you were just hearing whispers from other people and people on the phone with their mates going, surely not. And just the mood as we were leaving the ground, everybody was bouncing. And then there was this happening, and everyone was thinking, wow, what a perfect weekend.
I remember before the game as well, it was the time that Peter Kay had released it was for charity, wasn't it? Is this the way to Amarillo?
Right.
And the crowd obviously turned that into a song about Sunderland, which I'm not going to sing. But is this the way to Aston Villa was the starting line for that one. All right, we will move on before any of us break out in the song, and we're going to go to April the 3rd. And Kelvin, this was a memorable date for Dave Watson and in the Dave Watson household.
Well, you're just talking about breaking out into song. What about Watson, England? Watson, England? That used to be the chant that used to roll down from the Fulwell end about this lad. He 3rd of April, got his very first cap, made his England debut. He was the first player for 12 years to represent England. Stan Anderson had been the last one to make his debut. And what put him on the international stage, because he's a lad that had, before he came to us, he'd spent 5 years playing in the 3rd and 4th division. He hardly came from an illustrious background, footballing background. His performances in the 1972-73 season in the FA Cup, it definitely put him on the map, and brought him to Alf Ramsey's attention. But I tell you, there were some great centre-halves around at the time, the likes of Roy McFarland, Larry Lloyd, Norman Hunter, Paul Madeley, Colin Todd, Emlyn Hughes, and Bobby Moore was still in that England squad. He was coming to the end of his his time, but he was still in that squad, and they're all playing top tier football. Watson wasn't. He was playing in the second division. He made his debut in a friendly. It was against Portugal. It was a 0-0 each draw, and it was the only game he ever played for Alf Ramsey. But it might never have happened if when he was bought by Alan Brown to come to Sunderland. Brownie bought him as a centre forward. Now, Alan Brown is on record of saying that he thought he would be a centre half, but most of his time with Brown had been spent playing as centre forward, and his permanent move to centre back for Sunderland was initiated by caretaker manager Billy Elliott, and he moved him back in October '72. Moved him to centre back. And when Bob Stoko came in, he had the good sense to keep him there. When he made his debut, he played. Colin Todd played alongside him in defence, and they'd played together at Sunderland. They played 4 games together between just before Todo got sold. They'd played together, but Todd had played as halfback, and Davy Watson was playing up front. The England team that night, when he made his debut, was Phil Parks in goals, David Nish, and Mike Pedgick at fullback. Nish was at Leicester, Pedgick at Stoke, I think he was then. Todd and Watson in the centre of defence. And Martin Dobson, God, it's a right roll call this of great players like Martin Dobson. I always loved him. I wished we could have signed him. Trevor Brookin, Mick Shannon, Martin Peters, and Stan Bowles playing just behind Supermac, Malcolm MacDonald in that game. There'd been growing calls for Watson to come into the squad and at least be called up, and that chant at Watson England, it was a chant that you heard at Roker and from the away fans loads, because he was really strutting his stuff. He was head and shoulders, really strutting his stuff. To my knowledge, Davy Watson, he's still the record England internationalist as a Sunderland player. I think he still holds that record. He was 19th England international, and he followed in the footsteps of some great players: Billy Hogg, Arthur Bridget, who we're talking about earlier, George Holly, Charlie Buchan, Reg Carter, Bobby Kearney, Len Shackleton, Willie Watson, the England international double cap at cricket and football, and the singing winger, Colin Granger. Todd and Watson at the time. And lads, that I'm not an England fan. I might have told you that once or twice.
You haven't mentioned it.
Well, I'm not an England fan, but if ever anything was going to get me to support England, Todd and Watson playing centre of defence would have, I'll tell you. And at the time, there was great debates about who was the best pairing. There were a lot of good centre halves around, and there's still quite a few people even laying my Sunderland bias to one side, that would say that Todd Watson central defensive hinge was a cracking hinge, probably the best partnership at the time. They were both really, really good players, quick, good in the air, brave, good tacklers, but both could use the ball as well. I thought they were the best, and I wouldn't be alone at the time at thinking that they were the best pairing. Anybody that watched Dave Watson in 1972, 73 probably wouldn't argue with his inclusion in the squad in the England team, and the FA Cup had provided that platform for him. But although he was struck his stuff in the second division, if you remember, we played Man City, Arsenal, Leeds, and, the better class of opposition that we played, the better he played. He was just magnificent against them. We played a game the following season. We played Derby County, who were probably the best club team in England at the time. That following season, he was bloody brilliant in them League Cup games against Derby County. If you put him on the higher stage, he just seemed he rose to it. That was his pedigree. He had a bit of everything as a centre half that you could want. One of the things I always sort of enjoy because quite a lot of people call him Big Dave, but he was only 6 foot as a centre half. He wasn't a giant as a centre half, but he had this. I think why people said this was you never saw him beat in the air by too many people. And that was he had this prodigious leap. And he used to have that fantastic ability of being able to hang in the air, I wouldn't be the only one that would point that out when you watched him play. He'd good pace, he'd 2 good feet, although he was predominantly right-footed. He did have a left foot. And me, I love to see him galloping out of defence with the ball. At the time, more often than not, opposition players would back off when a centre half got the ball, expecting the big hoof up the field, And every so often, he'd see that space, the opposition would back off, and he'd just gallop forward. It was dead exciting watching him do that. And I think because he played centre forward, he was a threat when he did that. But his passing was good. When he galloped like that, he more often than not, if he laid a pass up, it hit its mark. Our current mantra till the end would have suited him as well. This was he was a lad that played 90 minutes on some. His concentration, his focus. Fantastic ability to hold his focus and his concentration on his game. He was a real, I think he was a real example to the other players round about him. And I've talked before about Davy Watson. He's such an athlete. And was so fit. His appearance stats were amazing for us, and it was the same for England. Do you know, in 5.5 years with us, 5.5 seasons with us, he only missed 11 games through injury. It's a hell of a stat. But he was just a player to go to war with. Davy Watson, you would go over the trench if he was leading you. But at the time, it did seem like Roy McFarland was the centre-half of choice. He was definitely Ramsey's first choice. And the only way Watson was going to get in was an injury, and McFarland got an injury, an Achilles injury, I think it was, prior to that Portugal game. And that gave him his opportunity. But I always loved the story about how he found out he'd been called into his first squad. It always sort of tickled me the way that that news was brought to him. So this comes from, there's a great book called My Dear Watson, and it's written by Davy Watson's wife, Penny. And I've just picked this from the book, and it's him talking about how he found out that he was going to get called into his first England squad. So this is him speaking. The season following the FA Cup win, Sunderland were, of course, in Europe for the Cup Winners' Cup. In our first leg of the first round, we were to play Vasas Budapest. I recall vividly browsing round the shops with my good friend Dick Malone. when Doug Weatherall and another reporter rushed up to me and told me I'd been included in my first England squad, I was genuinely surprised and so delighted that I was for a moment quite speechless. But it was a different world meeting up with my first international squad. I was in awe of all those world-class players. It wasn't until April 74 that I played my first game for England. And on that occasion, I was so nervous. I was just glad to finish the game. But after my debut, I had no doubt that this was the life for me and that from now on, my goal would be to command a regular England place. And I always think when I read that, you get a real sense of the kind of character and the kind of lad that he is. He's got that sort of nice, humble bit about him that a lot of people used to speak about, but also that drive and focus, I'm going to command a regular England place. And commanded he did, because after his debut, he went on to make 65 appearances between April 74 and June 82. 14 of those caps were awarded to Dave as a Sunderland player playing in the second division. And the last of these, as a Sunderland player, the last of his caps came at Wembley on the 24th of May 1975 as England beat Scotland 5-1. I'm just giving you that one, lads, just in case anybody wants to bring that up. Now, he nearly reduced us to tears that day, I have to say, but I took some solace from the fact that Watson had played such a big part in that game. He played loads of games with Colin Todd at the start of his career. I think 12 of his 14 games as a Sunderland player were played with Todd playing beside him as his central defensive partner. And it's a real sliding door scenario, that, isn't it? That central defence at that time should have been Sunderland's, but it wasn't. Todd had gone to Derby. He only played one game under Alf Ramsey. He played 5 under caretaker manager Joe Mercer. Ramsey left shortly after that Portugal game. 5 under caretaker manager Joe Mercer, who was kind of reluctant to pick him because he always, allegedly, he'd never seen him play. Joe Mercer had never seen Watson play. He mustn't have watched the cup final, I'm thinking, but there you go. He was reluctant to play him. He played 19 under Don Revie, 19 games, but it was Ron Greenwood trusted him. He played 40 times. He was the linchpin of Ron Greenwood's defence. And he was quite often, over that time, apart from Todd, he was paired with the likes of Emlyn Hughes, Phil Thompson, Norman Hunter, even. And later on in his England career, it was like Russell Osmond, Steve Foster, and even Mick Mills, who often played fullback, was partnered in the centre of defence. The reason I'm mentioning this is in this era, it was Dave Watson that played, and other people were moved in to play beside him. If he was fit, he played centre half. Just going back to his time under Don Revie, a controversial character and controversial England career he had, Revie. David joined Man City in 75, I think it was, and he became aware of a back issue requiring surgery just after the 1976 League Cup victory against Newcastle. Hey, let's say they're getting loads of digs, Newcastle the day on the. And whilst he was in hospital recovering from that surgery, he was never contacted by Revie. So he'd had 19 caps. He hadn't played 19 up to that point, but he played quite a few up to that point under Revie. And he'd never been contacted by him. There was no sort of, get well soon, how you doing, all that stuff. He recuperated. He got himself fit, and he played a fantastic season by any account, the 76-77 season for City. But without explanation, he wasn't called in any of the squads by Revy. And Revy had a track record for this, because Colin Tillard actually stopped playing for England because of the way that Revy had gone on, is my recollection of why Todd was stopped playing for England. So when Revy did eventually call him up, and he didn't contact him, he just named him in the squad. When he did call him up, Watson's initial reaction was to say no. He wasn't having that. He wasn't going to be trapped like that, no contact, 14 months in the wilderness. And, so he could have, his 65 cap count could have been more, but he'd 14 months in the wilderness. But it was, apparently it was his wife Penny and Tony Book, the Man City manager, that helped him change his mind and go back and go again with England. He did go back, thank goodness he relented. And he did have by anybody's description, a distinguished England career, One thing about his England career, a stat that's often quoted, is that he's the most capped England player never to play in a World Cup final. He never played in the final stages of a tournament. Yeah. And it does bear some scrutiny that it is correct. He didn't. So England failed to qualify for the 74 and the 1978 World Cup finals. In 1980, he was part of the Euro squad and played in all three group games in those final stages, but England failed to go through the group stages. In the 1982 World Cup, he was 36 years old, and prior to he'd been called into the squad, but he was excluded from the final squad by Ron Greenwood, who I always remember there being a bit of nip about this at the time. In 1982, Greenwood only took 3 central defenders with him to the competition. He took Phil Thompson, he took Steve Foster, they'd all shuttled in and out around Watson, they'd all played with Watson. And he took Terry Butcher, a young Terry Butcher as well, who that's what he went with. One of the things I said before about his appearance stats for Sunderland being remarkable, Bobby Moore held the consecutive appearance record for England with 27 consecutive appearances. Dave Watson holds that now. He took it on, and he had a record 33 consecutive games for England. He played 65 times, as I've said. He scored 4 international goals. He scored all them goals in 1979, bizarrely. And he scored 2 in 2 games versus Wales and 2 in 2 games versus Bulgaria. And in 1981, he captained England on 3 occasions versus Romania, Wales, and Scotland, the dirty dog. It does, when I read the team out that he debuted with and said it's like a roll call of all the great players of the 70s and early 80s, the England teammates that he played with the most, he played 44 games with Kevin Keegan, and him and Kevin Keegan and him are pretty good pals. 43 with Reid Clements as the goalkeeper, and I don't know if you can remember, lads, at that time there was a ding-dong battle between Clements and Peter Shilton, and it was Clements at first, and then Shilton would come in. And when you look at who played in goal when Davy Watson was playing, obviously, as I've said there, it was mostly Reid Clements, but Shilton starts to come in. I don't think Ron Greenwood could make his mind up,
I think he alternated them for a while, didn't he?
Yeah. Aye, and there was another lad, Joe Corrigan, was in the frame a little bit as well, but I think he was definitely back up to either Shilton or Clements. He played 37 games with Ray Wilkins, 34 with Trevor Bruggen, and he has one for you. I was surprised at this one. 31 with Steve Cottle.
Yeah,
yeah. And he did play a lot of games with Emlyn Hughes. Emlyn Hughes as England captain in the earlier years of his career. Played a lot of games with Emlyn Hughes. But at the time, there was a hell of a competition central defensively for England, because Emlyn Hughes played with a lad called Phil Thompson at Liverpool, and they were the central defensive pairing at Liverpool, and they were good, the two of them, and but more often than not, it was either Thompson or Hughes that would play with Watson in the centre of the England defence. So I find that quite interesting, that more often than not as well, defensively, he played a lot of games with Phil Neal and Mick Mills as the fullbacks, and as I've said, Emlyn Hughes played quite a lot of times with him, behind him. So, hey, Dave Watson, what's to be said about Dave Watson that hasn't already been said? He was a strong, brave centre-half for England. He was always proud to wear the jersey. He played with purpose and passion and never let England down. I'm an unashamed fan of Dave Watson. That probably comes across as, I suppose, I can pay him no bigger compliment than to say, I wish he'd been Scots.
Kelvin, Dave McWatson.
That must have been very painful, Kelvin, you having to do all that research into which England players he played alongside. So yeah,
well,
that speaks volumes as to how much you respect Dave Watson.
I'm such a pro, though, Andrew. I'm such a pro. Actually, it wasn't as painful as it might have been. I know you're just having a bit of fun with me, because some of them players he played with, it is a roll call of honour from the 70s and early 80s. Keegan, Bruggen, they're fantastic players to watch. Martin Dobson, I always thought Martin Dobson was dead unlucky that he was around at a time where you had players like Bruggen and Tony Curry and all these great central midfield players, that even Stan Bowles comes into the reckoning a little bit. There were different kinds of players, but I always felt sorry for Martin Dobson, because I always fancied him for us, I have to say. But a roll call of great players, but not great success internationally. It's interesting, isn't it?
You speak there about Emlyn Hughes and Phil Thompson, and as part of the Liverpool team, they were going to be conquering Europe in the subsequent years. But again, that tells you just how amazing Dave Watson was with an England shirt on, because for him to continue to be picked even after failing to qualify for World Cups. I mean, I think now if England failed to qualify for a World Cup, it would be a case of ripping up and start again. So for him to still always be relied upon, no matter how bad others around him are performing, just tells you that he really was a consistent, reliable defender at the real top level.
Yeah. 1982 was June 82. I seem to remember was his last cap, and he was approaching 36 when he played his last game, but wasn't called into that 82 European squad. I think he was playing at Stoke at the time.
I've just looked at that little three that did get picked. Now, I'd heard Steve Foster's name. I hadn't even realised he'd played for England, to be honest. And he only played a very small handful of international matches.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is peculiar that you've got somebody with all this experience. You've not even brought him along as backup for somebody like Foster, who's hugely inexperienced. And Butcher must have been quite young at the time as well. So, yeah, maybe there was more to it. I don't know. Maybe behind the scenes he decided enough was enough. I'm not sure.
Well, Butcher must have been in his very early 20s because he made his debut in 78 from memory. So he's only 3 seasons into his career, really.
Yeah. And Russell Osman was around as well, who played with Butcher.
Yeah, that's right.
Didn't he, at Ipswich? So he played a couple of games with Watson in the centre of defence. Yeah.
Did Bobby Robson take over after 82?
Yeah.
So it's not even like Bobby Robson was picking the Ipswich connections. If it was still Greenwood who was a fan of Watson, yeah, it's an interesting, and as always, whenever things come to an end, it's nearly always in sad circumstances or there's question marks. But hey, Kelvin, just the way you talk about Dave Watson and that, it's lovely to see, man. It's
just that privilege to see him play.
It's one of those things, isn't it? We all want somebody in our lives who talk about us the way that Kelvin talks about Dave Watson. And to keep us on the theme of today's show, Kelvin mentioned that for all of the exceptionally good players England had, they didn't seem to gel well and didn't operate as a team. And, maybe if Anthony Gordon's listening, or Craig Gordon, as he's been referred to on a couple of pods this week. If Mr. Gordon of anyone is listening, there's a marked difference between individual ability and a team. I can get a dictionary for you, Mr. Gordon, if you wish. We will stick on April the 3rd, 1886. Now, Sunderland played their first ever game at the Newcastle Road ground. We've been playing at Abbs Field before this. And this was a 3-1 friendly win over Darlington. Jimmy Hunter scored the first goal at the new ground. James Allen, a very famous name in the history of Sunderland, got a goal. And Harry Jobs got the other. 40 years later, so 1926, Bobby Gurney made his Sunderland debut away at Upton Park against West Ham United. And of course, he scored. Unfortunately, we got beat 3-2. But he got in the score sheet on his debut, and Jack Pryor scored the other goal for us on that occasion. 1965, we beat Sheffield United 3-1 at Roker Park. Harry Hood, Dickie Rooks from the spot, and George Mulhall with the goals on that occasion. 1971, we beat Swindon Town 5-2 at Roker Park. Bobby Kerr got 2, Billy Hughes got 2, and Paddy Lowry got a goal. 1 year later, 1972, Alan Brown Sunderland took on Jimmy Adamson's Burnley. Dave Watson, joining some dots here, scored the opening goal for us. We then went 3-1 down. One of the goal scorers was Martin Dobson, who, Kelvin, you've mentioned on a couple of occasions there. So just before the hour mark, we were 3-1 down. Billy Hughes comes on for Ian Lathan on 66 minutes. And 3 goals in 4 minutes gets us a win, turns the game around completely. Dave Watson gets another one, obviously playing in front. At this point, Keith Coleman gets one just a minute later. And on 79 minutes, the sub Billy Hughes gets the winner for Alan Brown's team. Must have been a cracking... It must have been Easter Monday game. It's Monday the 3rd of April, 1972. It must have been an Easter cracker to mix up some holidays.
I'm pretty sure it was Easter, that one, Martin. It was a bloody cracking game, that. I was a happy little chappy that day, I can tell you.
I bet you were.
Seeing as we're doing puns,
we don't do puns.
What
are you talking about?
Sincere apologies. This is painfully late. But when you were saying you were going to get a dictionary for Anthony Gordon, it wouldn't have been a Doug Collins English dictionary.
Hey.
That is not. As soon as I thought of that, I thought, do I dare say that or not? And I left it that long to make it even more painful. But feel free to edit that out.
No,
Simple one.
that is most definitely staying in. It brings me back to the Christmas quiz, Andrew.
Well, hey.
When I'm being reminded of that Christmas quiz, I know it's time for me to shut up. So no more peeps from me today.
We've only got 9 months till the next one. 1982. Now, here's a question for you, so have a listen to this. Loke Ursum became the first Dutch player to play for Sunderland. He was on loan from Stoke City, came on as sub against the Borough. We got beat 2-0. Who was the next Dutchman to play a league game for us?
Ooh.
What a question that is.
Question. Whoa. Give us a clue.
It wasn't Bolo Zenden, was it? Was there somebody in between?
Was
there nobody in between?
No,
nobody in between.
Here's a little side question for this. There was another Dutch player in our books in between that who played cup games, but Zenden was the next person to play in the league for us.
What was the name of that?
Can I give Kelvin a clue?
Was it a goalkeeper?
Yes.
I think it started with the same. The letter started with the surname started with the same letter. If I've got, I might have to check me. I might have to check me Collins English Dictionary for the spelling, but I think it was the same.
I can see it. I can see that keeper in my mind's eye, but I cannot get his name.
Edwin Zoterbyer, who Reid brought in and played in a couple of cup games, but never played in the league. Zoterbyer and Zenden are the only two Sunderland players who have ever played whose names begin with a Z. And obviously, Loke Ursum set off some, a trail of memorable names: Robin Reuter, Glenn Louvens, people like that, and Brian Brobby, and
Brian
Crowder,
Brobby.
and I'm not sure what Brian Brobby's doing these days. Oh, that's right, he's scoring against the Mags, isn't he? That's what he's up to.
Was that the game where our first choice goalkeeper, Robin Roofs, was unavailable, Martin? I believe he's a Dutch international, and he wasn't available, so we had to play a kid, and we still scraped a win. Am I talking about the same game?
That is actually the same game. Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's so all double Dutch to me. 1990. We talked about that Bradford game in 1990 where Kieran Brady scored a goal. A few days later, Sunderland turned up at Bramall Lane, and this was a massive game. Sheffield United were going for promotion as well. They were battling up the top of the table. Dennis Smith took the side off the back of that West Ham victory. Away at Bradford, picked up 3 points. Go away to Sheffield United. We end up winning 3-1. Paul Bracewell scored a brilliant goal. And he didn't score very often, but when he did, they were usually crackers, and he scored a fantastic goal. Marco got 2. Turned Sheffield United over 3-1. Brilliant game, brilliant performance, brilliant result. Sheffield United had a former Sunderland striker and a future Sunderland striker up front for them. And the future Sunderland striker scored the opening goal of the game.
Brian Dean?
Brian Dean is one. Yes, he got the opener. He was partnered alongside a former Sunderland striker.
Kelvin, would Billy Whitehurst be a ridiculous suggestion?
It wouldn't. It would be.
Had he gone to Sheffield?
Yeah.
Had he gone
was it Whitehurst?
Yeah. It was Billy Whitehurst, indeed. Yes, we've talked about him a couple of times in this pod as well. Billy Whitehurst and Brian Dean. There's a strike force to bloody strike fear into a centre half or two, isn't there? But Billy Whitehurst and Brian Dean were up front for the Blades.
I should have known that because, I know I say this, but I was at this game. I did a terrible thing. I was working and I'd gone to deliver some training to a project somewhere in I can't even remember where it was. I'm going to say the south of England, somewhere. And I always remember saying, I'm just going to stop off for the game on my way back. How the hell I managed to rope Sheffield into my journey back? It was ridiculous. Thankfully, my wife at the time wasn't that good at geography and didn't. Oh, God. Yeah.
Also, we've got an order of a dictionary for a Mr. Gordon of Newcastle, and we've got an atlas or A to Z for Kelvin's ex-wife. 1998, Sunderland beat Tranmere away 2-0 with goals from Kevin Phillips and Nicky Sumby. 1999, we beat Dennis Smith's West Bromwich Albion 3-0 at Stadium of Light. 2 goals from Kevin Phillips and another from Lee Clark. And in 2010, this was a game that we beat Spurs 3-1. Darren Bent got 2 goals. He also had 2 penalties saved. Bolo Zenden, who we've just mentioned, scored an absolute belter. And Anton Ferdinand did the moonwalk, only for his goal to be ruled out. We will take a very short break there and be back soon.
AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
Don't chew on that, Max.
Cooper loves that shoe too.
Oh, now he's into Cooper's food. Wow, he is loving it. What do you feed Cooper?
Blue Buffalo Life Protection Formula. He never leaves a crumb. I love it because it's made with high-quality protein, nutrient-rich fruits and veggies, and wholesome whole grains.
Looks like we're switching to Blue.
Blue Buffalo foods are made with the superior ingredients your dog needs to thrive. Can your dog food say that? Visit feedbluefood.com to learn more.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast for another episode of On This Week, and we are on April the 4th as we enter the closing stages of this week. 1936, Johnny Mapson, Sunderland's FA Cup winning goalkeeper, made his debut for the club in a 5-0 win over Portsmouth. 1972, now this one stood out to me. 1972, Mickey Horswell makes his debut in a 3-1 win over Preston. Dave Watson, Ian Porterfield and Dennis Stewart got the goals for us. But, just over a year later, he's winning the FA Cup. It's a pretty meteoric first year playing professional football. I hadn't realised it was such a short period of time in between him making his debut and playing in the cup final. But what a year that would have been for Mickey Horswell.
Brilliant year for him. He did sort of, we had a lot of good young'uns. He kind of punched his way through and got himself onto the pitch because we had a lad called Mick McGivern that played for us, that was just a little bit older than him, and McGivern was a very, very handy player, Mick McGivern, but Horswell kind of punched his way past him, really, punched literally. He could be a roughhouse, Mickey Horswell. He wasn't a shy Ben even when he came into the team. He wasn't shy at putting himself about. Like every team seemed to have a player like that. Then in somebody in the middle of the midfield, like they used to call them enforcers, but as a young lad, he definitely wasn't that. But he was a live wire. He was. He couldn't have put a tackle in and got himself about the pitch. And I think his hair as well, he was sort of gingery blonde hair that stood him out as well. You can always see what those characters are up to as well. They don't hide themselves as well as other players. Yeah.
So Kelvin, earlier, and we can assure everybody this is not scripted at all. Earlier, you mentioned Emlyn Hughes. In relation to Dave Watson's teammates at England. Can you remember what Emlyn Hughes' nickname was?
Crazy Horse.
Crazy Horse, that is right. So in this game against Preston North End, Mickey Horswell made his debut. And can you remember the goal scorer for Preston?
Crazy Horse. Was it?
It was Neil Young. So there you go.
Neil Young. Oh,
brilliant.
Yeah.
Martin,
look at that.
This episode is going to go down in history because there's been some cracking little one-liners and little links. The Horswell thing's quite interesting to me because as a kid, I looked back on that 1973 team and all the players were already legends. So I automatically just assumed that they must have all played hundreds of games each for Sunderland and that they'd been at the club for years. But Horswell is a great example of, well, actually, he'd only been in the team for a year. Like you said, Martin, he was only just making his way. And then there was other players in that 11 who joined the
Ron
first
Guthrie,
team.
Vic Hallam, been there for a matter of months, hadn't they?
Exactly, but just as a kid, I thought, well, wow, for them to have pulled off this amazing story,
likewise,
they must have all been part of the fabric of the club over time. So it's funny, isn't it, how you make up the narratives in the head and in your head, and then it's only when talking to yourselves that things actually you go, oh yeah, that's not quite how it panned out in truth.
That's right. It is. It is strange, isn't it, when you read something you brought up with, that's a team that won the FA Cup. So as you say, you assume that there was a lot of longevity there. And, there was for some of the players. There was a core of that group that had been there for an awfully long time. But there was a few of them that had not played as big a part over the past 5 or 6 years. And that's all.
Horswell and Neil Young hit the right notes in that Preston game, though, didn't they?
I was going to make a sensible point about, I don't even think Horswell made that many appearances for Sunderland in the grand scheme of things afterwards. But Kelvin, I should have known. I should have just kept shut and let you do your joke, because it was much more interesting.
I wouldn't have minded being in his company when he went to Man City, Mickey Horswell. I think he had some good times over there. Not necessarily football times, but he had some illustrious company over there when he went.
I want to say when he went on his nights out, was he forever in blue jeans? But that wasn't Neil Young, was it? Was that Neil Diamond?
Diamond.
Oh, man. What a shame.
Close, but no cigar. Right. 1978, we beat Stoke City 1-0 at Roker Park. Bobby Kerr got the goal and Alan Durbin was in charge of Stoke. 1988, this is his third division championship run-in. And we talked earlier about the York City game and got beat. All sorts of trouble around that game. Went to Grimsby, scraped a 1-0 win. Come back to Roker Park for a game against Chesterfield. Paul Lemon puts us 1-0 up after 8 minutes. But the game swings and a chap called Dave Waller scored 2 in 10 minutes for Chesterfield to put us 2-1 down. Fortunately, Colin Pascoe, who just arrived at the club, got a goal pretty much straight away on half an hour to equalise. And then with just 12 minutes left, Marco Gabbiadini scores a winner. But again, a really tight game that could have gone either way. And, you look back on this third division season as us storming to the title. And we had some brilliant spells of results and form within that season. But it certainly wasn't all plain sailing. But this kind of put us back on track. And we eventually got over the line quite convincingly. 1989, so a year after this, Sunderland played Plymouth Argyle at Roker Park. Brian Atkinson made his debut. We won 2-1. Gordon Armstrong got 2 goals. I'm sure that Atkinson scored in the very first minute or two and it got disallowed for offside. I am convinced. I haven't looked at the match report, but I just remember that from memory. Because me and my dad were 2 of the 8,001 people inside Roker Park that night. It was a freezing cold night. And yes, fortunately, we held out for a 2-1 win. And Paul Williams, a young right back, I think he was born in Liverpool, wasn't he? He's obviously famously got skinned by Lee Sharp at Old Trafford a year or two later and kind of didn't really kick on much at all. But he came on for his debut as a sub for Brian Atkinson late in that game. And 2004, Sunderland played at Old Trafford in the FA Cup semi-final against Millwall. And we thought, got a brilliant draw here. If we win this in the FA Cup final, we're back in Europe. And of course, we get beat 1-0. And of course, it's Tim Cahill who gets a goal and Jason McAtee loses his head. And it ends up being a pretty miserable afternoon down at Old Trafford, doesn't it? We will now move on to April the 5th. 1890. This is the day that Sunderland get the name of the team of all of the talents, because they beat Aston Villa 7-2 in a friendly at Newcastle Road. Jock Smith, Jock Scott, I'm not too sure where those two came from. Johnny Campbell with 2 goals and James Gillespie with 3 got the goals for us. And we wore white shirts with blue shorts, apparently, on that day. So there you go, a bit of a change up in kit. 1980, just to continue the theme, Sunderland beat Newcastle 1-0 at Roker Park with a goal from Stan Cummins. 1986, we beat Fulham 4-2 at Roker Park. This was obviously a rare Laurie McMenemy victory. Sean Elliott got 1 goal, Ian Wallace got 1, and Mark Proctor got 2. 1992, now this is probably worth a deep dive at some point, but obviously not today. FA Cup semi-final down in Hillsborough. Sunderland 1, Norwich City 0. John Byrne scoring the goal for us, and what a day out. That was a fantastically good. Yeah, we had the Cop end at Hillsborough, didn't we?
Yeah.
And superb day out.
I really enjoyed it that day. And can never go back there without thinking of the 1973 semi-final, but it matched it in terms of great atmosphere that
brilliant.
day. Yeah. Even the Norwich fans were good crack that day as well. It was a good game, but they were a good team, Norwich.
Well, they were excellent team. They were a top flight side. We were struggling, really, weren't we, in the second division? And we seemed to be able to turn it on for cup games. And man, we went toe with them and got the goal and did brilliantly.
I remember as well. It's funny because we mentioned him earlier, Anton Rogan. He played centre back that day. Kevin Ball and him didn't started the game
And for a good spell in that back end of that season, Rogan played centre half alongside Bawley, and I think whether Gary Bennett was injured, I remember Benno came on and sub in this game.
He did. Yeah.
But they were quite a good solid pair, and Hardiman was at left back, and obviously that's what ended up Paul Hardiman leaving the club after he got left out of the cup final team, because Gary Bennett got brought back in and Rogan got shifted over the left back and Hardiman got left out. And it was I still think that was a strange decision by Martin Crosby. We can come on to that another day, but yes, fantastic day out in 1992.
Lads, apologies. Did we mention Rogan in the recording, or was that before hitting record? Because just if we've got listeners now pulling their hair out thinking, when did they talk about Rogan before? I thought I might just say that might have have I got that right? Or was
I think I was off. That was in our pre-recording warm-up. That was.
Yeah.
Was it? Sorry.
There you go. So we mentioned Anton Rogan earlier.
No apologies needed.
We did mention Anton Rogan before we started recording. It was in relation to an article that Kelvin has penned, which went onto the website last week for anybody who wants to go and dig that out. But a fantastically good read about the fullback who signed from Celtic and ended up playing centre-half for the majority of this cup run. And he kicked off a nice line of vest sales in the Northeast during the as
come
well.
On. Get your vest on for the lads. Hey, Kieran Brady was so that day.
He was
the semi-final day. I would have loved to have seen him on that day.
Oh, you just imagine what you could have done in the cup final as well, coming on.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
There we go. 1997, Alan Johnson, who we had signed a week earlier from Rennes, made his debut for Sunderland against Newcastle. This was a 1-1 draw, and Micky Grace scored the goal at St James's Park. 2005, another brilliant away day. Marcus Stewart scoring a goal against Wigan Athletic down at their place to give us a 1-0 win for Mick McCarthy's team, and that was such a good. We had the vast majority of supporters in that ground that night. Marcus Stewart scores a goal. Wigan and Sunderland were vying for the promotion places, weren't they? And Stewart got the winner to send us all delirious. 2008, we beat Fulham away 3-1. This was Roy Keane steering the club to safety. Danny Collins got a goal, Michael Chopra and Kenwyn Jones. And, let's have a look at this. 2015, Stadium of Light, Sunderland 1, Newcastle United 0, Jermaine Defoe another goal, another win. We'll take that all day
Come
long.
on.
For our final deep dive today, we're going all the way back, Andrew, to 1901 and a Good Friday derby against Newcastle United.
Yeah. We seem to have had two themes today, don't we? One is having digs to the mags, and one is kind of sending listeners in the way of other podcasts we've done, or sending readers to various articles we've written. And I've realised this feature is going to help me do both. So I've, by complete fluke, that's worked out quite well. You're quite right, Martin, on the subject of stuff that's been on the web. I really liked the Anton Rogan write-up that Kelvin did. That was enjoyable. He was a player I remember at the time, and yeah, plenty of stuff to go and look at if you're enjoying your Sunderland history. This particular game, 1901, we were meant to play against Newcastle on Good Friday, but the game ended up having to be abandoned before it even started. There was extreme crowd congestion and crowd disorder. So it led to ugly scenes in Newcastle, and it meant the game didn't even kick off. Quite interesting, Martin, when you were talking about that crowd in 1989. It was Plymouth, wasn't it, where there was only 8,001 hardy souls turned up. Yeah. Well, this game is at the complete other end of the scale. So from like a relatively low crowd, even by the standards of the 1980s, I'm talking about a crowd that was estimated in 1901 of around 70,000. They thought there was about 70,000 inside the ground, which, I mean, that is just staggering numbers, particularly in 1901, actually, because although football was hugely popular, it wasn't until the 20s and 30s that you saw crowds of that scale on a regular basis. I mean, St. James Park at the time, its capacity was only meant to be officially 20,000. So, to have potentially up to 50,000 more people in the ground just says, I mean, quite scary, quite scary, really. And this was one of those days where we're all quite lucky that we can look back on it now and talk about it, but not be having to touch on deaths or anything. It could have turned, it could have been a very different story, I think, given the circumstances. Now, we spoke a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, about how a game at Roker Park at against Sheffield Wednesday in 1903, there was elements of crowd trouble there, and that the investigation into that led to Roker Park being closed and Sunderland having to host a home game at St. James Park as part of the punishment. 2 years earlier, the trouble had actually taken place at one Tyneside, and it wasn't the Sunderland fans to blame, according to most reports, gents. We were top at this point. We were top of the table under Alex Mackey. We fancied our chances of going on to win the title. Newcastle were also in the hunt, though. They were up near the top. They could have conceivably got their hands on the championship. That added extra spice to this derby. As I say, it was a Good Friday, and that was back in the times when Good Friday was a proper bank holiday. People did not have the luxury of just booking long weekends from work and having a few days off here and there, or building flexi time. Good Friday was a rare occasion when you were off work. The weather was good as well. According to reports, it was a nice, warm, sunny day. So all of these things into the mix, no surprise that everybody wanted to turn up to the football. It's bound to have been a busy day. As I say, St. James Park at the time held around 20,000. About a quarter of that number came from Sunderland, seemingly. There was about 5,000 Sunderland fans travelling, and that was fine. Everybody knew that Sunderland were bringing those types of numbers along. It was the up to 50,000 buffers that caused the issues. Seemingly, you had thousands of fans scaling the walls and the fences, getting there to get in for nothing. A couple of gates were forcibly knocked down. They were deliberately damaged so that tens more thousands of people could just merrily force their way in, get in for nothing. As I say, around 70,000 were calculated to be there. So that's like more than double the maximum capacity, more than double had got in for free, caused serious overcrowding. I'm going to read a piece from that day's, or the following day's Sunderland Echo and Shipment Gazette, which is a reaction to that. And it gives a bit of an idea of what we were dealing with. This was the following day's Echo, and this was kind of like the editor's comments. United's unpleasant position, it was called, the football riot. And it goes, the disgraceful spectacle witnessed on the ground of Newcastle United at St. James Park yesterday confers a bad premonitions on the Novo Castrian club. Such incidents are, happily, a very rare occurrence, and the rowdyism that marked the proceedings yesterday was specially discreditable. Hooliganism was rampant. The crowds who invaded the enclosure deemed it well to tear down the goal nets and remove the goalposts, and generally they acted as blackguards of a specially asinine type. We shall not waste time on details. They are given on another page. And that's what I'm talking about throwing forward to a future article that's going to be on the website this week. There was so much colour, so much detail in the main article about this that I'm going to do an On This Day feature. I didn't want to read it out all today because it would have taken quite a while. It goes into some depth. But I'm going to pull out a few snippets and write that up later in the week if anybody's liking this story and wants a bit more info. But I'll continue with this article because it gives you a rough idea. What seems to us to be the most important point is the responsibility of the Newcastle club for the deplorable occurrence. It was more by good luck than good management that there was not a serious loss of life, and that those who were injured suffered nothing worse than broken limbs or lacerations. That the club will have to pay penalty in one way or another for what has happened goes without saying. Upon the directors rested the clear obligation to preserve order, and they do not seem to have realised this in any practical sense. All the circumstances of the case conspired to stir the directors to take precautions. The strong feeling aroused by the match, the general holiday, the very fine weather, these facts were bound to ensure a vast crowd, and it was the duty of the directors to have made provision for coping with special pressure. At the Sunderland ground this season, the necessity for dealing with a great multitude was foreseen and preparations made. When the place was as full as was compatible with safety and order, the gates were closed, and sufficient policemen were on the spot to prevent riotous disturbances by those who could not get in. No such arrangements appear to have been made at Newcastle. There were no force of police outside, although unlike Roker Park, the palisadings at St. James's Park can be scaled. The directors seem to have turned to good luck that everything would pass off pleasantly, leaving a record gate. Good luck, however, it is not to be relied upon with safety. Instead of gloating over a golden pile, the directors may find themselves bemoaning some more or less severe penalty. the incident will have a salutary warning effect upon all other great football clubs. So again, that's heavy stuff from the paper there. They're not, being neutral. They're putting their blame firmly at the doors of the Newcastle United administration. The article that I'm going to write later in the week, there's several sources suggest that the Sunderland fans, although disappointed that the game gets called off, they behaved impeccably. There's calls for this gate money to be given to local charities because, of course, the game didn't take place in the end. And just the whole thing seems to have been badly managed. I promise you, I had selected this story before the latest problems at St. James's Park, but again, in 2026, we're still having issues with policing and crowd management. It's baffling, isn't it? It's mad that like over 100 years later, the derby can still provoke this kind of fervour, and unfortunately, it goes too far. You had all of these fans storming the gates and coming in. Because of the overcrowding, that spilled onto the pitch. And a lot of the people on the pitch at first weren't looking to cause trouble. They were just getting to an open area for their own safety, because parts of the grandstands were visibly shaking and visibly creaking and depressing under the weight of people in the crowd. There was panic setting in that one of the stands was going to collapse, or people were going to be crushed. So at first, the fans had to spill onto the pitch just to get away from danger. But then when the referee and the players and the officials try and get onto the pitch, they realised there's no way we're going to be able to clear this lot. So the game gets called off. The players pack up and go, but because there's no means of PA at that point, there's no way of communicating that the game's being called off. It's only when it turns to kick off and there's no sign of the players, people start to realise, and they're cotton on that, like, oh, now it's going to happen here. That very quickly turns into unruliness and anger, and the police come under attack. People start, it's mad. People start ripping parts of the ground down, the goalposts and the goal nets, as mentioned there. They get damaged. It's wide scale disorder, and I think it was one of many incidents that have happened over the years. We talk about the 1990 playoffs. That was quite famous when there was disorder. I think there was riots in Newcastle after various defeats. Am I right, Kelvin, in thinking in the 1970s there was a story when they tried to get a cup game abandoned against Forest?
Forest,
is that right?
Yeah.
So, this wasn't a one-off. And listen, I'm not saying Sunderland fans are angels. We did touch upon that game in 1903 when there was reports of issues and the referee apparently had a few oranges thrown at him. But, in more recent times, horses got punched as a result of a Tyne derby. It goes way beyond passion. It goes well into the extreme. As I say, I'll go into the detail more when I write about it. I did like an advert in the paper that I'll be quoting in that article. I did like an advert for a weekly magazine that they did above the article. They didn't name the weekly magazine, but they listed in this advert all the different columnists they were going to have. And the sports columnist was a fella called Billy Fairplay, which is a lovely name for a sports columnist. I don't think there was much in the way of fair play in 1901 when everybody was booting off and it caused all of these problems and the game had to be written off. How about this though for a drop-off, lads? The rearranged date was at the end of April, by which point Newcastle were out of the title race. There was a heavy police presence by that time. They'd learnt their lesson. And there was only 18,000 694 turned up. So that's around 52,000 people within the space of 3 weeks have thought, I'm not that fussed for watching a game against Sunderland anyway. Sunderland won the game. Billy Hogg, Bobby Hogg both scored for us. It actually put us back on top of the table on goal difference. But Liverpool, unfortunately, had another game to fulfill afterwards. They won it. They won the title. So this big occasion that could have been a title decider and could have seen Sunderland go on to a glorious success, it wasn't to be. It's one of those occasions where we look back and think, what if the game had happened when it was meant to happen? And again, it brings us back to March 2026 and our latest trip there. Obviously, there was the similarities between the issues with crowd behaviour and crowd management. But also, this is a game from 125 years ago that I'm talking about. And we can all recognise the behaviour, that like desperation to be in the crowd. You know, people are going extreme lengths to see a Sunderland versus Newcastle game. And we're exactly the same now in 2026. That sheer desire and interest in the game is still the case. And who knows, in another century's time, are people going to be looking back at the weekend's events and talking about them with that same amazement? I mean, just some of the things I saw on Sunday before the game. There's people queuing up outside the Mill View and the Blue Bell to get a good table to watch the game. This is at 9 o'clock in the morning. They've obviously decided against going to Newcastle and climbing the fences to get in. Very fortunately now we can watch the game on the TV, but there's people milling around Seaburn Metro Station to go there, and some of the women are obviously going to have like the full day out because it's Derby Day and they're dressed in like their smart clothes. And I mean, it was like Black Eye Friday along Sea Road. Just people, so many people out, so many people going to the pubs. I saw one fella who I know, he rarely goes out these days, but he was walking to the pub at daft o'clock. He had like his drinking shoes on. He was ready for he was ready for the day. And like, there was 2 kids outside the Flying Boat. I went to drop my daughter off at work and I drove past the Flying Boat at 10 o'clock. The Flying Boat is packed out. And outside of it, there's these 2 kids that must be like junior school age. They were stood on the tables. They had their hair dyed red and white. They're wearing full Sunderland kit. And they're both, no word of a lie, stood holding flares aloft in the air. The smoke's billowing across the road. And like people are slowing down and beeping the horns and giving them the thumbs up and shouting, "Haway the lads." The dad is like proud as punch of them, taking photos of them. Their mum is stood behind the dad, bless her. You could perhaps guess that her face wasn't quite as impressed. She was thinking, why are my 2 kids stood on tables with blooming pyrotechnics in their hands 2 hours before a game? But again, just this idea of community and people proud to show the support around the club, and particularly Sunderland at the moment, there's a feel-good factor around the club. The scenes are wild, and the times might be different, the fashions might be different. You know, I don't think many people were dyeing their hair red and white in 1901 for the big game. But just nothing has changed.
No.
Newcastle v Sunderland will always be this amazing event where tens and hundreds of thousands of people want to be a part of it. Staggers me.
Yeah. I got an admission here for you, Andrew. I was once caught climbing over the wall at St. James's Park by
to get out or to get in?
By a burly sergeant, you know. He grabbed a hold of us. He says, "Get back in there and watch that shite like the rest of them."
Well, at least on that day, there was some police present. Apparently, if the reports are to be believed, there were only 25 police officers on duty on the day of the original game. 25 police officers. And of course, they've got to try and quell the behaviour of thousands of rowdy football fans, bless them. But yeah, it was before your time, Kelvin. It was before my time, obviously, but some things are just written in the stars. And like I say, when somebody sits down to do a podcast in, I don't know, what would it be? What would 100 years be from now? I can't even think. But again,
21-26, mate.
21-26, rather simple maths, actually. There'll still be Sunderland fans talking about great days when everybody turned up to the game, and 9 times out of 10, Sunderland got the win.
Get in.
Very good. And that is how we like it, isn't it? Well, that wraps us up for today. And we've done so well, not to mention the derby, haven't we? It's been quite impressive, really. So well done, everyone. Andrew, do you have a non-derby related question for the listeners to ponder over the coming days?
Yes. Did we mention the 1973 FA Cup semi-final earlier on in this episode?
We didn't.
We didn't. It was the 1992 semi-final.
Yes.
That's it. I was panicking. I was panicking a little bit there. I thought I got my dates mixed up. Yeah. Next week will be the 7th of April, 1973, when the 1973 FA Cup semi-final took place. Sunderland played Arsenal. It was at a neutral venue. We might have given some clues there about which city it was staged in. I can't wait to hear Kelvin's recollections of that game because I've heard him talk about it before and it was a brilliant day. But the quiz question is, which city and which ground staged that semi-final against Arsenal?
Excellent. There you go. If you've been listening carefully, you will be able to pull the answer out of today's episode, won't you? So all that is left for me to do is say thank you very much, Kelvin. Oh, Kelvin's on mute. Kelvin's muted himself. He does this towards the end of the show.
Stop pressing my mute button, you guys, again. Stop shutting me up. Cheers, lads. Cheers. Enjoyed that.
Excellent. And thank you very much, Andrew.
Cheers, Martin. I bet Martin wishes he could shut me up, Kelvin, because I have a habit of going on. But hey brilliant episode.
It's all very good stuff, isn't it?
It is.
It's all part of what makes this football club so bloody good. So
Life's rich manure, Martin. That's what it is.
Life's
rich manure.
Absolutely spot on.
This week's has been particularly full of rich manure in the form of some excellent jokes. So I loved that one. Well done, boys. And yeah, thanks for having us.
Excellent. Well, we will be back tomorrow. Of course, it's the international break, so we've got all sorts of different stuff coming at you, but we've still got a podcast every day. Tomorrow, myself and Chris and Johnny are doing a Room 101 episode. I think we've got part 1 tomorrow and part 2 the day after. So yes, Chris is adjudicating over mine and Johnny's controversial choices. Some are more controversial than others. So tune in for that, and we'll have all sorts of other stuff coming at you throughout the course of the week as well. But until next time, it is goodbye from us.